You really spent money on that hunk of junk. She looked at my car, then at me, then laughed. My manager met my car before she met my work. It was sometime in the early morning when I turned into the lower lot behind Astor Quill Holdings, the kind of glossy corporate place where everyone dressed like they had been steamed on a hanger. My car looked wrong there. It was an older silver coupe with clean paint, original trim, and an engine that purred like a secret. I had rebuilt half of it with my father in his mechanic shop, learning torque specs before I learned office politics. Dana stood near the entrance with a paper cup and a face like she had bitten a lemon on purpose. I set my bag on my shoulder and smiled. Only on the parts that matter. She folded her arms. When I saw the car, I felt it was an insult to the parking lot. That line got a laugh from two analysts trailing behind her. People in offices love borrowing someone else's cruelty. Nanit lets them feel expensive at no cost. I should have been embarrassed. Instead, I felt strangely calm. Under that hood was a hand-tuned engine, upgraded suspension, and a transmission I had sourced on Facebook Marketplace from a man who swore it came out of a terrible divorce and an excellent decision. I had bought the car cheap, rebuilt it on weekends, and kept it because it reminded me who I was before conference rooms and polished teeth. My father used to say, "Never argue with someone who only knows the sticker and not the system." So I did not argue. I went upstairs and delivered the revenue model Dana had forgotten to review, corrected a risk note she was about to present to the executive team, and listened while she took credit for all of it in a voice that could frost glass. Humiliation in public is rarely about the insult. It is about the witness list. That afternoon, she sent a company-wide email about professional image standards. No names. Praised my work. If a manager starts praised my work. If a manager starts creating a narrative, you start preserving a record. Dates matter. Tone matters. The pattern matters more than the single slap. People think strategy begins with a dramatic move. It does not. It begins with a folder. By late afternoon, I took my lunch in my car, and I ran numbers on my phone the way other people doom-scrolled. My weekend side business had done well that year. I bought tired cars on Facebook Marketplace, repaired what others ignored, cleaned them up, and resold them for a margin. Not magic. Margin. A weak battery cable here, a neglected cooling system there, cosmetic neglect everywhere. Most people do not understand that condition, paperwork, and timing can turn overlooked assets into clean profit. That was true for cars, and it was also true for buildings. Across the street from our office stood the Marlowe block, a handsome brick property with retail below and offices above. I knew it because my father and I had once repaired a delivery van for the owner, an older man named Ron, who complained more about his tenants than his blood pressure. A month earlier, he had mentioned he was tired and thinking of selling before another round of repairs. At the window, Dana swept past with her heels clicking like bad punctuation. She mocked my car because she thought it showed my ceiling. What she did not know was that I had cash reserves, an LLC for my side business, clean books, no consumer debt, and a habit of studying deeds, leases, and seller financing terms after dinner. I had not spent years under cars and spreadsheets to impress women with leased handbags and fragile authority. That evening, I drove to my father's shop. He slid out from under a pickup, wiped his hands, and took one look at my face. "Someone said something stupid," he said. I leaned on my shining hunk of junk and smiled. "I think someone may have funded my next move." He laughed. "Good. Spite is useless by itself, but properly invested? Beautiful." He was right. I did not want to win an argument. I wanted to own the ground it happened on. By the next morning, Dana had moved from mockery to management theater. She called me into a glass conference room, sat me across from her, and tapped a printed page as if she were presiding over a criminal trial instead of a quarterly budget review. You are talented, she said, with the careful smile people use before a knife. But perception matters. Clients notice details, car choices, wardrobe choices, the overall message. The message that I arrive on time and fix your spreadsheets? I asked. Her smile hardened. The message that some people belong in certain rooms. There it was. Not feedback. Positioning. And if you are ever in a room like that, do not fill the silence for the other person. Let them say enough to become useful. I asked one question. Is this related to my performance? She hesitated. Not directly. That was all I needed. I sent a follow-up email after the meeting summarizing her comments and asking whether the company had a written vehicle policy tied to job performance. Never rely on memory when a clean written question can do the work for you. People get very careful when they have to lie in complete sentences. She did not reply. Human resources did. The reply was bland, polished, and accidentally helpful. There was no policy. Personal vehicles were not part of performance standards. I saved that too. Meanwhile, I called Ron about the Marlowe block. He sounded tired in the way older landlords do when every unit feels like a separate small war. Roof patching, late rent, insurance jump. An HVAC issue he had been ignoring with the optimism of a man who hated invoices. He wanted out, but he also did not want brokers, staging, or a parade of men in loafers telling him his building had character issues. I asked for the rent roll, maintenance history, tax bills, and copies of current leases. He laughed and said I sounded older than my voice. I sound solvent, I told him. That made him like me. My father and I reviewed everything that evening on a workbench beside a disassembled carburetor. Real due diligence is not glamorous. It is rent deposits, estoppel certificates, deferred maintenance, title review, and the question beneath every deal. What can go wrong and who pays when it does? The answer, ideally, is not you. The building was better than it looked. 2 retail tenants were steady. One upstairs office lease was under market. Another tenant, a boutique image consulting firm called Lucent Atelier, had missed payments twice. I almost laughed when I saw the name on that lease guarantee. Dana Voss. Not the company. Her. Personally. Lucent Atelier was her side business, the one she bragged about during lunch, as if she had invented silk blouses and invoices. She rented the nicest corner suite in the Marlowe block to coach wealthy women on executive polish. Apparently, Polish did not include paying on time. That is the woman? He asked. The very. That is the woman? He asked. The very one. He whistled softly. Now that is an interesting engine noise. Here is what many people miss about power. It is not noise, money, or confidence. It is paperwork attached to enforceable rights. Ownership is not a feeling. It is a recorded document. Ron wanted a quick sale and liked the idea of selling to someone local. I offered a lower number in exchange for speed, limited contingencies, and seller financing for part of the price. He countered. I countered back with repair estimates and proof of funds from my LLC, plus a private note from my father as backup. We settled by dinner the next day. No dramatic music, just signatures pending title review. At work, Dana was still performing superiority like it was billable. She interrupted me in meetings, reassigned one of my projects, and made a little joke in the break room about whether my car needed a push start. I smiled so sweetly my molars almost cracked, because by then I had already ordered the inspection, opened escrow, and instructed my attorney to review every tenant lease in the building across from our office, including hers. Dana thought she was teaching me my place. What she was really doing was giving me a front row seat to her fixed expenses. Closing a real estate deal is much less glamorous than people imagine. No one hands you a silver key while violins swell. You sit under bad lighting, Sign your name so many times your signature starts to look guilty, and wire enough money to make your stomach feel hollow. Then you wait for the recorded deed, because possession is a conversation, but ownership is a filing. When the Marlowe block closed, I did not tell anyone at Astor Quill. I went to work, parked my silver coupe in the lower lot, and carried a blueberry yogurt to my desk like a woman with absolutely no plans for poetic destruction. Dana was in a sharp cream suit that morning, for a car like that. I set my yogurt for a car like that. I set my yogurt down. That is kind of you. Consistency is underrated. One of the staffers smothered a laugh. Dana liked an audience. She had no idea I had acquired a much better one. Counsel, title insurance, a property manager, and a complete file on every tenant across the street. I had spent the previous evening with my attorney, Mina, reviewing the Lucent Atelier lease. The company had a default notice history. Late fees were unpaid. Insurance certificates had lapsed twice. Worst of all for Dana, she had signed a personal guarantee and a use clause that prohibited unlicensed beauty service events, in which she had apparently hosted more than once according to building records and social media posts. This matters. When people are emotional, they like dramatic retaliation. Dramatic retaliation is sloppy. Lawful leverage is cleaner. You do not create trouble when the other party has already built it for you in writing. Mina sent formal notices that afternoon. One to all tenants announcing new ownership and payment instructions. Another specifically to Lucent Atelier regarding existing defaults. Know anything about this building? Know anything about this building nonsense? She snapped. The new owner is being absurd. I looked up from my screen. I know quite a bit about the building. She dropped the letter on my desk. Who asks for updated insurance with 48 hours notice? Someone who has read the lease. Her eyes narrowed. What is that supposed to mean? I folded my hands. It means the new owner has rights and tenants have obligations. The usual romantic story. It took her a beat. Then another. The color drained from her face in stages like a sunset in reverse. You. I tilted my head. Owner, actually. I will admit something unattractive. That moment was delicious. Not because she looked shocked, because she looked small in the exact way she had tried to make me feel small. She had mistaken optics for substance. She had mocked a machine she did not understand, and a woman she had not bothered to evaluate beyond a parking lot. She laughed once, too sharply. This is harassment. No, I said calmly. It is asset management. There is a difference, and your attorney will explain it if you retain one. That afternoon, she ran to Human Resources and then to our division head, claiming conflict of interest, retaliation, intimidation, and likely witchcraft. I had already disclosed my new ownership position to legal and recused myself from any internal decisions involving her side business. Clean hands matter. If you have a personal dispute tied to a business move, separate roles immediately and document that separation. By late afternoon, our division head called me in. He was less interested in ethics than in whether Dana had been using company time, company contacts, or reimbursed lunches to support Lucent Atelier. She had. Sloppily. Expense records do not care how stylish you are. An internal review began. Across the street, my property manager reported that Dana still had not provided current insurance and had an overdue balance that now included late fees, legal notice fees, and prior arrears that Ron had been too tired to chase properly. At my father's shop that evening, we changed brake pads on a hatchback I planned to flip that weekend. Grease under my nails felt steadier than revenge in my chest. You look pleased, he said. I look informed, I said. He grinned. Same thing, when done right. Dana had insulted my car like it was a symbol of failure. Now her lease file was a case study in why image is expensive and negligence is more expensive. Dana did what people often do when consequences finally introduce themselves. She confused panic with strategy. She sent me 3 emails in one afternoon. The first was insulting. The second was flattering. The third proposed a mutually beneficial understanding over coffee, which is executive language for please stop reading the documents I signed. I declined in writing and directed her to my property manager and attorney. Never negotiate informally with someone who has already shown you they prefer pressure over truth. Friendly conversations have a nasty habit of becoming fictional later. At work, the review of her expense reports widened. The company found client dinners billed on dates that matched Lucent Atelier events. A designer mirror had been expensed as presentation staging. Car service receipts had destinations nowhere near the office. Dana had built her status the way some people build a luxury kitchen in a rental. Beautifully, recklessly, and on someone else's tab. She stopped making jokes about my car. She also stopped smiling. A few days later, my property manager called with the update I had expected. Dana had not cured the defaults. She sent partial payment without fees, no current insurance, and a dramatic letter insisting that the prohibited use clause was subjective. It was not. Contracts are wonderful that way. They do not care what feels subjective when the wording is plain. Mina filed for possession. Eviction sounds theatrical when people say it fast. In reality, it is procedure, notice, evidence, deadlines, hearing dates, and whether your records are cleaner than the other side. She cornered me in the underground garage. She cornered me in the underground garage sometime in the evening, standing beside my silver coupe, as if proximity gave her authority. "This is all because of a joke?" she said. I locked my door and faced her. "No, the joke simply introduced me to your character. You are ruining my reputation." I almost laughed. "Dana, on. That is an important distinction in on. That is an important distinction in any dispute. Your best position is rarely attack. It is illumination." Her chin lifted. "You think buying a shabby building makes you powerful?" I ran a hand over the roof of my car. "No, understanding assets does." She looked at the coupe with open contempt. "I still cannot believe you drive that thing." I smiled. "That thing funded part of your notice to quit." Her face twitched. "Worth every busted knuckle from the years before." The hearing went quickly. We had the lease, the ledger, the notices, the missed cures, the guarantee, the use violations, and the building records. Dana had indignation and a silk blouse. The court favored paper. Possession was granted. By then, her problems at Astor Quill had become too expensive to ignore. The corner suite emptied in a single ugly rush of garment racks, velvet chairs, ring lights, and framed quotes about feminine excellence. Status, it turns out, fits into a moving van. I did not watch from the window. I was busy reviewing bids for facade repairs and negotiating a better lease with a local estate planning firm for that same suite. Reliable tenants beat glamorous ones every day of the week. That night I drove to my father's shop and told him it was done. He nodded, as if I had simply completed an alignment. "You bought right. You documented right. You enforced right." Then he looked at my car and smirked. "Still an insult to the parking lot?" I patted the hood. "Only to people with weak eyesight." The strange thing about winning is that it gets quiet very fast. A week after Dana cleared out her suite, the office hummed as if she had been erased with a premium brand of disinfectant. People lowered their voices when I passed, not because they feared me, but because they had finally updated my category. I was no longer the young analyst with the old car. I was the woman who read the fine print, bought the building, and let the paperwork do the talking. That version was much more accurate. Astor Quill terminated Dana by the end of the month. Officially, it was for policy violations and misuse of company resources. Unofficially, It was because once a person becomes expensive and embarrassing, corporations suddenly discover their principles. Her desk disappeared over a weekend. Her name vanished from the directory by early morning. Prestige has a very short lease when the invoices come due. The corner suite in the Marlowe block went to Bell Row Legal, a small women-led firm that handled estate planning, trusts, and elder abuse cases. I like that. There was something satisfying about replacing vanity with substance. Their managing partner paid on time, asked intelligent questions, and sent muffins to the other tenants instead of attitude. The building stabilized within a few months. I refinanced on better terms, fixed the facade, and raised the value without raising my voice. As for my silver coupe, I kept it. I could have traded it for something sleek and forgettable. Instead, I detailed it on a mild Sunday, changed the oil myself, and drove it to my father's shop with the windows down. He stood in the bay door, arms folded, smiling at the sound of the engine. "You know," he said, "most people spend their 20s trying to look rich." "I know. And you spent yours learning what holds value." I leaned against the car. "Turns out there is a difference." That is the lesson beneath all of this. The one I wish more women were taught before some loud fool tries to price them by appearance. Keep records. Understand titles, leases, guarantees, and debt. Separate emotion from execution. When someone humiliates you publicly, do not race to perform pain. Audit the situation. Ask what is enforceable, what is provable, and what can become an asset if handled with patience. A pretty insult can still be structurally unsound. I stayed at Astor Quill for another stretch, long enough to leverage my results into a better role elsewhere. I negotiated salary, bonus terms, severance language, and equity with the same calm I used when buying a transmission from a stranger in a grocery store parking lot. Men call that confidence when they do it. On women, it gets called surprising. Fine by me. Sometime in the early morning on my last day, I parked in the lower lot and sat for a moment with my hands on the wheel. The car gleamed. The engine settled into its familiar, smooth idle. Across the street, the Marlowe block caught the light along its restored brick. My brick now. My rent roll. My deal. My proof. Dana had looked at this car and seen a punchline. I looked at it and saw an apprenticeship. Shop floors with my father. Weekend flips. Grease. Spreadsheets. Missed parties. Saved cash. Studied contracts. Patient choices. The hood had always hidden more than horsepower. It had hidden discipline. I stepped out, locked the door, and crossed the lot in heels that clicked a little like victory. Let people mock what they do not understand. Then buy the ground beneath their certainty.